Good, I can use it.
Seems like the PC is waiting for something.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be having a nice time connecting, but I'm not real worried about it.
Cool. You ready to go?
Yep. Take
Cool.
it away.
Now, without further ado, Dr. Kaos.
Hello. Thank you guys for hanging around for the afternoon session. I realize this is happy hour, so I'm going to do my best to keep everybody interested and motivated to stay throughout the presentation. Real quickly, show of hands, how many here actually made it to ShmooCon this year? All right, so there's 5 or 6 of you that will spot me for not having changed the presentation significantly since ShmooCon. Hopefully you'll let that slide. There have been a couple of changes, and I got a couple of other announcements. So, with that, I will kick this off. Again, my name is Taylor Banks. I am also known to some as Dr. Kaos of Chaos Theory, and I am here today to talk about AnonymOS, because no one needs to know. So, first and foremost, who are we? Chaos Theory. We are a loose-knit group of security professionals, hackers, artists, general lunatics, and I could probably continue to add entries to that category. We are scattered across the planet, though several of us live in Atlanta. We have members all across this continent and also throughout Europe. And we are here today to talk about AnonymOS. Now, actually, I intended to bring a couple of other folks with me. They didn't make it here for the presentation, although hopefully, if all goes well on my secondary laptop, we will be bringing them in via Skype towards the end of this presentation. So, AnonymOS, this is what we're here to talk about. This is our latest release, AnonymOS being an OpenBSD 3.8 live CD. This was a big jump for us, and this was a big motivation in getting this to a release-ready state prior to ShmooCon. We've made some changes since, and I'll be talking about those a little bit later on. AnonymOS is a secure environment designed to be usable by anyone that provides applications, client-side applications that are intended to be secure and anonymous out of the box. In theory, AnonymOS should be easy enough for your mom to use, of course, assuming she has something to hide. So, what AnonymOS is not. AnonymOS is not another Hacksaw, Auditor, pen testing, hacksering toolkit. You will not find port scanners and vulnerability assessment tools, Metasploit, and the like on AnonymOS. There are plenty of tools, plenty of operating systems, plenty of live CDs that provide that functionality. We have a very different goal in mind. So, without further ado, why did we build AnonymOS? Well, we had several motivations. And again, knowing that members in our group come from several different backgrounds and work for several different institutions, the environment today, the environment is a hostile environment. What with spam and phishers, adware, malware, spyware, and the insecure environment that we operate in, our operating systems, our applications, our networks, even our protocols are inherently insecure. So this poses a problem. How do I maintain security? How do I remain private and anonymous while I'm on the internet? I don't want everybody in this room to know what I'm doing when I'm out browsing around, whether I'm browsing corporate websites and researching a company for which I'm doing a penetration test, or whether I'm browsing granny tranny porn. It doesn't matter. It's none of your business. There's also heightened monitoring by governments and corporate interests, and we know this, and what with Patriot Act, it's getting scary. The operating environment it's very delicate now, and you never really know what's being tracked and where. But the internet is also a place where people intend to communicate, create, buy and sell, trade, collaborate, work, and play. So how do we reconcile these? How do we reconcile this hostile, dangerous environment that is the internet with, hey, I got a whole bunch of things that I want to do, and I don't want to have to worry about who's watching me do it. Speaking of work, we got a screenshot here, and it's probably kind of hard to see, especially for the folks in the back. But I'll give you an idea of what this is. While one of the members of our group was doing research for this presentation, in an effort to go to the Tor website to pull up some text for this presentation, his corporate proxy filtered access to the Tor website. Access to this requested website is prohibited. So this is another important reason for the existence of AnonymOS, because in a lot of cases, we don't want to be limited by the decisions others are making about what we should and should not see. More networks, the proliferation of very convenient but dubiously secured networks. As we've heard about in a couple of different contexts, including this morning from Ken's talk, there are a wide variety of open access points and wireless access points, internet cafes. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of places that you can connect to the internet, free, easy. Unfortunately, again, these are dubiously secured networks, so we have more to worry about there than anywhere else. You have no idea what somebody's doing in the network that you walk into when you sit down at a Starbucks, or better yet, your local coffee shop that isn't using a standardized T-Mobile hotspot style system. You don't have to wear a tinfoil hat to be worried about privacy, and this is really the basis for why we built our operating system. Whether you're an activist, an organizer, a dissenter, or somebody who is, again, bound by their corporate network, you want to buy stuff on the internet, and you don't want people to know where you're buying or what you're buying, again, or even your mom or her mom. They don't want to know, or they don't want you to know, that they're browsing granny tranny porn in their spare time. Finally, as an investigation tool, it's important to bear in mind that privacy is an important concept, not only for the average citizen or average individual who wants to protect themselves from federal agencies, but it's also important to the federal agencies. When you're working for a big three-letter agency and you're trying to investigate child porn or identity theft or terrorism on the internet, leaving FBI.gov in logs as you're performing investigations tends to be a bit conspicuous, and therefore it can be difficult to actually track the criminals that you're trying to track when you don't have an easy and effective way to be anonymous. So all this is good. These are all the reasons why we built AnonymOS, except unfortunately, being anonymous, being secure, is becoming a more difficult thing to do. There are tons of tools to assist the savvy Linux or BSD or OS X user, but again, the design goal for AnonymOS was not to require someone to be a geek in order to get and maintain security and privacy. In this example, a normal user faced with multiple manual configurations. So this is the process of setting up and configuring Tor and Privoxy on this particular BSD box so that we can easily browse the internet and not really worry about what people see. I don't expect my mom could do this. Hell, my mom has a hard enough time with OS X, and I think the interface is pretty easy. So the bottom line is we set out to build an OS that would essentially do all of this out of the box with push-button ease, and we chose OpenBSD to do it. So that brings us to the how. The how. There are a number of design goals, and this actually goes back to a presentation I gave at Interzone in 2004 maybe, on building an anonymous operating system. At the time, the idea was to build something like AnonymOS, but we had no concept of actually doing it. So I set out and built a presentation saying, here are the things that I would want to see in something that would ultimately become AnonymOS. Number one, it must be an inherently secure system. If the system itself is vulnerable to attack, any of the privacy tools and privacy mechanisms on the system are going to ultimately be mitigated or be ineffective because of the chance somebody else gains control of our machine. It's got to be able to bypass restrictive filters without user configuration. If I work for one of these Big 5, Big 4, Big 6, Big 3 consultancies, and my corporate proxy is preventing me from getting to the Tor website, I need to be able to pop up, boot up an operating system, and get to whichever websites I want to get to without having to configure a long list of whitelisted URLs. As well, it's got to be as quiet as possible. Part of the design goal in AnonymOS is I plug my box into a network, I'm running AnonymOS, I don't really want you to know I'm there. My preference would be that not only do you not see me, I don't stand out on logs, I don't stand out in scans, and if at all possible, I won't show up on your scans because there's nothing running or available on my box, and fingerprinting attempts are thwarted. So at the same time, we have to ensure confidentiality and integrity without configuration. Again, coming back to the system must be easy to use. Tools available. There are a wide variety of anonymizing overlay network tools between Tor, JAP, I2P, Morphmix, Freenet, Entropy. We had a long list of systems to evaluate in order to say, hey, what's going to be best, what's going to be most effective for providing anonymity, and in all honesty, which has the best infrastructure, which is the most supported, the most actively used, and the most likely to see continued development. Similarly, there are a number of anonymizing web proxies. And again, we ended up opting for one for the same reasons. Again, because of its popularity, because of its use. In this case, it wasn't because of an active development cycle, but I think that's actually changing. So what we did, we actually standardized on Tor and Privoxy, or Privoxy, and I hope or assume that some, many, maybe all of you are familiar with both Tor and Privoxy. So hopefully you'll have a little bit of an understanding about the way this system works. Nonetheless, I'll go into more detail in just a moment. So building AnonymOS, how this works. Number one, we have to start with a minimal base operating system. Again, recognizing the design goal of being secure by default, we don't want to have to work with a system that we're going to have to tune, configure, remove, delete, wipe out. So we want to start with a minimal operating system, and from there we harden the host. There is no host that I know of that today doesn't require hardening in order to be an effectively secure system. From there, in order to ensure, again, that our box is not going to jump into a network and broadcast its presence, we have to do both ingress and, more importantly, egress filtering. We've got to make sure that our box is not shooting out random traffic across the network. We chose onion routing, again, and we chose Tor to provide onion routing in order to give us an anonymizing overlay network within which we can do our browsing, do our surfing, our chatting, or our email. And again, we use anonymizing proxies. There are a couple of reasons why. Initially, there was a technical reason for this, but at the heart of it, it's defense in depth. We've got multiple layers of anonymity in the system, and that's really the design goal here, again, is to have something that is thoroughly anonymous and secure. Further, we want to try to enforce encrypted protocols whenever possible. No matter how good your onion routing system and your anonymizing proxies are, if you're using POP3 or IMAP in clear text, regardless of where your traffic starts or ends in the onion routing network, somebody can see what you are doing. If you use insecure protocols, you are not anonymous. Somebody can open up your packets, look at what you're doing, and say, I see where you're checking your email, and in fact, you just shot your POP3 password across the wire. And finally, again, in order to make this easy to use, we had to do this not only with CLI tools, but we needed to provide a GUI that was as close to a Windows simple start button GUI as possible. With that, securing the host. So where do we start? Minimal secure base operating system. This was actually a topic of much debate internally. There are 13 of us in Chaos Theory, and we went back and forth for weeks, probably months, about whether or not we would standardize on OpenBSD or FreeBSD or Gentoo Linux or some other existing distribution. And the bottom line is we finally chose OpenBSD for any number of reasons. Number one, secure by default. That's right there. That's the tagline on the OpenBSD website. Again, some hardening required, but a lot less than in the case of other operating systems. Number two, and this was a big piece for us as well, it hasn't been done before, or at least not well. Now, I'll be the first to admit there are dozens of how-tos and guides and walkthroughs on the internet on building OpenBSD live CDs. Unfortunately, prior to our releasing AnonymOS, as far as we could tell, none of them really worked well enough or produced a fully working OpenBSD live CD. I will credit a lot of the folks that put out the how-tos and put out the guides that were out there on the internet because they served as a starting point for us. But again, due to errors or omissions or misconfigurations, none of the guides, walkthroughs, how-tos that we started with actually produced anything other than some form of a coaster. And finally, of course, using OpenBSD makes you KRAD-leet. So, what we also did in order to further secure the operating system from fingerprinting, we made changes to the TCP behaviors at the stack level. Through changes to syscontrol and OpenBSD and through changes with the OpenBSD PF firewall, we made an effort initially to modify TCP stack behavior to, for the most part, emulate a Windows XP system. Now, there are a couple of reasons we did this. We could have chosen to modify stack behaviors and look like nothing else, look like some unknown system that is not easily identifiable by our fingerprints, by our footprints in the network. Unfortunately, doing so makes it just as glaringly obvious as if we stuck with the original OpenBSD fingerprints. If somebody's out scanning the network at my local coffee shop and they get 15 Windows boxes and an unknown box, guess which box they're going to continue to investigate? The unknown box. So again, we aimed to make our behavior look as much like Windows XP Service Pack 1 as possible, and we extended this into the client software as well. We modified standard browser behaviors so that the browser we're using inside of AnonymOS looks more like IE or maybe Firefox running on Windows XP than the browser that we're actually utilizing and the system that we're using. From here, again, I talked ingress and egress filtering. Both are very important in the case of a system that's going to be both secure and anonymous. So all incoming and outgoing packets by default are managed by PF, and we are essentially blocking all inbound traffic. There are no open ports on the box. There are no listening services. But more importantly, we're also blocking most outbound traffic. The goal here was to eliminate unencrypted or non-anonymous traffic to the greatest degree possible. So what we did, we basically narrowed down the list of ports that are used by Tor for our outbound connections. And there are a couple of ports here that are used by the Tor directory servers as well as the Tor servers themselves. Unfortunately, and again, a topic of much debate, we went all the way to the wire with this. We did not want to allow outbound port 80. 443 was okay, but port 80, we said, ixnay on port 80. It's unencrypted, and somebody's eventually going to go in and accidentally change the proxy settings in Firefox, and bam, they're going to bypass everything that we've worked hard to put together inside of AnonymOS. The problem was, when we investigated this a little bit further, we yanked 80 out of our packet filter, and we started trying to push the box, and all of a sudden our demos broke, and we couldn't get out anywhere, we couldn't do anything. Well, as it turns out, there are essentially 3 Tor directory servers that are Tor sanctioned or Tor official directory servers. 2 of them run on port 80. The third one runs on an alternate port, and it's down. So we were left with, hey, if we want to use Tor, unfortunately, we are going to have to use port 80, port 443. Not really a bad thing in the sense that, again, I walk into a corporate network and plug in my box. A lot of corporate networks and a lot of filtering systems are going to shut down alternate traffic that's not on port 80. So it's good to have. However, in its first iteration in AnonymOS version 0.shmoo, as we dubbed it, there's no real control to ensure that outbound traffic is actually managed by Tor. We just used PF and said, hey, all right, these are the only ports we're going to allow out. Now, in the second version, which is forthcoming, what we've done is we've made some changes so that those ports are allowed outbound, but only by specific system services. And so by that mechanism, we're ensuring that essentially only Tor and other anonymizing mechanisms on the box are able to send traffic out through the Ethernet interface, Ethernet or wireless interface. So, included major applications. Here's what we did and what we standardized on. We went through and kind of looked at what are going to be the most common applications, what are people going to be the most familiar with, and what's going to, again, be the easiest to use for my mom or my grandmom. We are using Xorg and OpenBSD. We went with Fluxbox as a window manager because it is lightweight. One of the things you'll see, I think in a later slide, is that OpenBSD is by no means optimized for live CD execution. It is designed to be installed on your drive and run as a full operating system on your system. For that reason, there are some performance issues that we see with OpenBSD that we haven't yet been able to eliminate entirely. We've made some progress, but there's still work to be done in terms of OpenBSD's performance as a live CD. We went with Firefox as a browser. Again, standards here, something everybody's familiar with, and with Firefox's growing popularity, this was pretty easy. You'll notice this is Firefox 106 versus 1.5.x. An important thing to point out here, and again, this is something I'll touch on later, almost all of the applications installed in AnonymOS are straight from the OpenBSD ports tree. We did this for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost reason being maintainability. In order for us to track changes to OpenBSD stable and improve and update AnonymOS as new iterations of OpenBSD came out, the easiest thing to do was to standardize on the OpenBSD ports tree. Thus, everything is really an update, and we're not rebuilding everything from scratch every time we decide to spin out a new version of AnonymOS. Second thing here was ease in building. We had a lot of questions and feedback from folks who said, okay, hey, I grabbed the ISO when you guys released it, and how do I really know this is AnonymOS? How do I trust it? How do I trust the binaries you're using? How do I trust the pieces and components that you have installed in the operating system? The easy answer was, if it's in ports, it's easy for you to replicate the system from scratch, from source, on your own drive, and not have to worry about what we might or might not have done with our code. So I will tell you, we have not done anything except utilize OpenBSD as a base OS. We have used all of these binaries straight from the ports tree. We've added a few scripts and a little bit of back-end foo in order to make all this stuff glue together and automate the boot-up process so that somebody that is not familiar with OpenBSD can still set up their network card and get an IP. Command line side, we've got links, we've got MUT, GPG, SSH, Vim. Again, we're trying to go for kind of common applications that would give you basic internet connectivity, essential functionality for web, mail, chat, etc. All right, this brings us to the slide on onion routing. Now, another show of hands here. How many in the room are familiar with Tor and onion routing as a process? Awesome, that's most of the people in the room. So the greatly oversimplified explanation that goes along with this slide is onion routing works much like anonymous remailers work. Essentially, it is a series of encrypted envelopes, or in the case of onion routing, and the reason for the concept, it is much like an onion. There are layers upon layers of packets. What we're doing is we're taking our traffic and we are encrypting it to the last possible destination. From there, we take that packet and encrypt it to the previous destination in our chain, all the way back to the first entry point, which is the last or outer layer of our encrypted packet. Thus, what happens is as we send our packets through this onion routing network, essentially each node is only going to be able to remove the outer layer. And further, at the very best, each node is only going to know about the previous and the next node after it. It should never know both the start point and the end point in an onion-routed environment. Now, the one thing about this diagram that Dingledine pointed out when we were talking at SHMU is that, unfortunately, this is somewhat inaccurate because in new versions of Tor and new versions of the code, the number of onion routes is now hard set at 3. So there is not going to be an instance where you are routing through 12, 15 different onion-routed nodes, unless, of course, you go in and make modifications to the source before building. So this is Tor, kind of in a nutshell. Actually, let me jump back. One thing I do want to say about Tor is that in this case we use Tor 0.1.0.14, which again was straight from the OpenBSD ports tree. In our next iteration of AnonymOS, again in our forthcoming release, we have actually opted to use an alpha version of Tor that is not in OpenBSD ports. This was motivated primarily by Dingledine and the Tor development team. They came to us immediately after our presentation at SHMU and said, by the way, we just announced a major vulnerability in 1.0.14, and it would be really awesome and would probably help performance a lot if you guys go ahead and update to the latest beta, or better yet, the latest alpha. So that's what we've done. Tor is one of the only tools in AnonymOS that we are actually tracking alpha versions rather than tracking OpenBSD ports, but it is the exception, not the rule. From here, again, we use a local proxy. Now, there was originally logic in using a local proxy because of bugs in client applications. For instance, despite the fact that Firefox has native SOX support, unfortunately, Firefox had a DNS leak, such that when you made a request, even though your HTTP or HTTPS traffic would pass across the Tor onion routing network, unfortunately, your DNS requests were direct. They would shoot straight out to the DNS servers, and even if somebody couldn't see you browsing grannytrannies.com, they'd know that you did a lookup on grannytrannies.com, and they'd probably be able to guess. So Privoxy was originally implemented in order to fix that leak, the reason being that Privoxy works as an HTTP or HTTPS proxy, and using its HTTP and HTTPS proxies, Firefox does not have this leak. Now that said, in version 1.5 of Firefox, the leak was corrected, so you can use a native SOX proxy and not have to worry about DNS being leaked. This is also something we're using to further our anonymity by blocking things like user agents coming from the browser, referrers from the sites that we're browsing, and again, client OS types and variables. So we utilize Privoxy in this instance to, again, change our browser signatures so that instead our client OS variables that are sent or queried by a remote site, they actually reflect Windows XP Service Pack 1, and I believe we had this set using Firefox 1.5 was our attempted masquerade. Something we've determined after the fact, I'll get you in just a sec, our attempts at TCP fingerprinting evasion worked well, but not well enough. We actually missed the mark a little bit on looking exactly like an XP Service Pack 1 box at the stack level. So now you have something that looks kind of like Windows, depending on which tool you're using, and kind of like Unknown if you use the other tool. Question? should, unless I'm incorrect, it should. And I'm certainly willing to be corrected, but...
I use squid, and when you send HTTPS to squid, it's just tunneled, or whatever they call it.
I guess that's very possible because I don't have a. We don't have a
setting up the SSL connection on its own, then it won't be able to modify that.
Yeah, we're not dropping certs into Privoxy in order for it to essentially perform a man in the middle. So I guess you're right. In this case, it probably is a tunneled connection, and so therefore, yes, I guess as HTTPS, then those values are not masked. To be honest, this was something that we considered to be kind of a minor, again, more of a defense in depth thing, because ultimately, if you can't tell where I'm coming from or who I am, which browser I'm using should be less relevant. But excellent point, and something I'll have to update into my slides.
There's the plugin for Firefox that can change
The user agent. I don't know if there's one for, I would imagine there's got to be one for client OS type as well. I know there's a user agent switcher for Firefox. Okay, all right, cool. Thank you. You'll be the first to receive swag at the end of our little session here. So from here again, on to encrypted protocols. I mentioned that it would be important to use encrypted protocols. Again, the reason being, if you are using unencrypted protocols, you're not anonymous. I don't care which onion routing network you're using. Therefore, most, in fact, all of the clients that we've implemented in AnonymOS, they natively support both SOX proxy, but they also support secure protocols themselves. HTTPS, IMAPS, POPS, Secure SMTP, etc., etc. DSOX then pushes non-SOX aware applications over our SOX proxy, again, in this case, Tor. So this way we can take applications that don't have native support for our SOX proxy, FTP being a great example, and we can force them through our SOX proxy regardless and not worry about FTP being the one errant connection on our machine that is in fact not properly anonymized. So for the most part, we are automatically SOXifying all non-SOX aware clients and protocols, and we've done this with a collection of scripts so that if you run any network-enabled binary from inside of AnonymOS, it is automatically going to have its traffic diverted through SOX if it doesn't have native SOX proxy support. So this brings us to what is next, and I will say, unfortunately, I originally intended to come to LayerOne and have our next iteration, our next version of AnonymOS ready for release. We'd release it, everybody would be happy, we'd all celebrate. Unfortunately, we didn't quite hit the mark, so our next version, although pretty far along, it's still in private alpha. I won't give you a release date, but I will say we have made some changes. Some of the changes you'll see here in our next couple of slides, in our roadmap slides. But I did bring something that we're going to release here at the conference, because otherwise I figured I'd be lynched at the end of the presentation. So, what's next? First, issues. Tor can be slow. Anybody that's used it knows that, and really, this is something that's dependent entirely upon the nodes that you're connecting to or through as you browse to your eventual destination. Sometimes you get lucky, and you get that great server that's sitting at Georgia Tech, where they've got an enormous pipe, and hey, for all intents and purposes, you can't tell you're going to an onion-routed node. Sometimes you get that 28K Tor server that somebody popped up at their house because they're trying to add to the overall anonymity of the network, but unfortunately, it also affects performance when you happen to hit their node. Again, as I mentioned before, OpenBSD is not optimized for live CD usage. This results in two things. Number one, semi-sucky performance. Number two, enormous consumption of the file system. We don't really have a good, effective, compressed file system that we can use like we would be able to if we were using Linux as a base for our live CD. Thus, we can't fit AnonymOS into a 64 meg or 128 meg USB stick. At this point in time, I think AnonymOS is currently approximately 550 megs, and a lot of that has also been tuned out in our next version. In this case, most everything was statically compiled, and therefore there's a lot of library redundancy. And further, the way we built this system, because we used ports, in a lot of cases when we installed a port or a package, we ended up with multiple versions or iterations of certain libraries that we don't necessarily need, but to be honest, we just haven't gone to the trouble of removing the old glibs and old versions of things that were installed by ports tree. So, again, the distribution is not small, and it definitely has some room for improvement on the performance front. I will tell you that either on A, relatively fast box, or especially B, running inside of virtual machine software, a la VMware, Zen, Virtual PC, etc. Performance is pretty stellar. The reason being we eliminate CD seeks. And the seeks at this point in time are the biggest killer of performance on AnonymOS, in that the file system is not laid out to avoid constant seeking across the surface of the CD. Roadmap. Oh.
Anything toward putting it up in RAM if there's enough?
We've done that to a certain degree. In fact, some of what we do at boot time, we basically expand part of the file system into RAM. So the portions of the file system that are the most constantly read and written are running from RAM. One of the problems that we debated as we built this was we don't really know what type of machine you're going to be running this on. So working within the constraints of potentially 128 megs of memory all the way up to a gig of memory, we wanted to make sure that what we did kind of applied across the board regardless of which system you're using. Now, at this point in time, we've kind of got one of our beta scripts where we're detecting memory and then basically determining which tools to throw into RAM after we've determined how much memory the system has. But there's still tweaking to do there as well. So that's been helpful and it's been effective. Unfortunately, a lot of the base system, again, runs directly from the CD. And, you know, you'll hear it. If anybody in the room is booted AnonymOS, your CD-ROM drive is going to go nuts almost the entire time you're using it. You're just seeking across the surface of the CD constantly.
You mentioned you were encrypting all the communications, but you say how, what method of encryption you're using. It seems to me that with Tor and how slow Tor is in the first place, and then adding the overhead of encryption, with everything going in and out, it seems like it's done.
So two points to answer that question. We're not really enforcing encryption of anything and everything. We're recommending and we're trying to ensure that default configurations will point you in the direction of IMAP-S instead of IMAP. So there's nothing we're really doing to enforce encryption except at the Tor layer. Tor provides its own encryption as part of the onion routing process. But other than that, we're not really doing anything to enforce it. Again, we've got our PF filters tightened down pretty well, so hopefully you're passing encrypted traffic inside of the Tor session. Above and beyond that, though, in general, I don't find that the overhead of, say, IMAP-S versus IMAP running across Tor makes a noticeable difference. It's probably measurable. To tell you the truth, I couldn't tell you on the order on which order of magnitude it would be. But I don't find that the additional encryption at the protocol layer, at layer 7 for client apps, web, and mail, makes that much of a noticeable difference. And I think the reason being, to be honest, is Tor is the bottleneck here. Tor is the slow point, and so therefore anything else we're doing above and beyond that has got plenty of time to catch up, because 5 times out of 10 you're going to hit some slow Tor servers and you're going to feel like you're on a 56K modem again.
With Tor, you can actually specify certain, not servers, but the direct finish path and start.
You can. Bearing in mind, though, that also affects anonymity because it makes for a much more predictable path that a client is taking. So there are a few things that we've looked at doing, and I'll make a couple of comments about what you guys can also do to help improve performance towards the end of this presentation, but all very valid points. So optimizing performance, again, for us, this means two things. Number one, optimizing speed, and that we've looked at trying to optimize the file system layout so that we can eliminate seeks. Unfortunately, this is a pretty daunting process for us in that none of us are file system hackers, so none of us can sit and look at a snapshot of a file system and say, well, let's move these bits of data here and there, and I'm sure we're going to improve performance 100%. We have had some initial communications with some folks that have implemented a tool for improving performance on Linux-based live CDs through file system analysis and file system rearrangement in order to improve seek time. So that's on our list of one of the things we're evaluating. If it just so happens anybody in the room is a file system hacker and you want to help us improve file system performance, please see me after the presentation. Again, one of the things that we have already implemented in our next version, in our alpha version, is running Tor, both the alpha version, but also running it in a shroot. At this point in time, Tor is just running with the rest of the operating system. We're aiming to move our most critical daemons into shrooted environments in all cases. Again, it's a defense in depth thing. We'd like to believe that, hey, OpenBSD is inherently secure, Tor is inherently secure, but were there a significant root level vulnerability in Tor, at this point in time, it would give you root access to the operating system you're running from. Right now, we do not have, well, I say right now, in the version that's currently available, we do not have a boot from or save settings to a USB stick mechanism. That is forthcoming in our next version. That was probably the single biggest request we had alongside how do I install this to my local hard drive. So those were our two primary goals in our second version were, A, we got to make AnonymOS easily installable to your base hard drive. Number two, it'd be really, really great if we could run this from a USB stick. Now, bear in mind, because we haven't done the file system optimization yet, you're going to have at least a 512 meg, if not a 1 gig USB stick, just in order to be able to get this puppy to run. The other thing we've looked at doing is mounting local file systems. Again, understanding that the focus of AnonymOS is client-based. We need to be able to mount local file systems and grab data from our documents directory or our buddy list or whatever else it is that we want to use when we're out browsing the web, checking our email, or chatting with friends. Packaged emulator version. We've begun testing on this, and I can tell you firsthand that AnonymOS runs great inside of emulators, whether, again, you're using VMware, Virtual PC, QEMU, Zen, the whole bevy of them. The performance is actually pretty good, especially as compared to running it off of CD. What we're looking to do, though, is create a bundled version that you essentially drop onto your USB stick, you pop into a Windows box, and no reboot required. You've got an anonymous operating system from which to run. As well, a little bit more boot time optimization, as you'll see from my really bad idea live demo. As you'll see from the live demo, we've done a lot to automate the boot process. Are you wireless? Are you wired? What is your network name? So we think it's pretty good, but at the same time, the mums and grandmoms aren't even going to really know the difference between a lot of what we think are simple questions. So we're implementing a mode where you basically boot up AnonymOS, you hit one button that says go, and it's going to do its best to identify the first live network connection it can find. It's going to auto-generate a root password. So all of the things that right now we're requiring user intervention for, hopefully we will eliminate. Automatic evasion of egress filtering. This is a much longer-term goal, but think along the lines of AnonymOS being tunneled across DNS, a la Dan Kaminsky's previous exploits. Now, you want to talk about really poor performance, leave it to us trying to tunnel everything we're doing, which is inside of Tor, including the encrypted protocols inside of those, and then pushing it through DNS servers. I'm not real optimistic about this being a very viable long-term mechanism, but hopefully it's something that we can look into as well. And finally, anti-phishing mechanisms. We did some things at the browser level, again, just to improve overall security and anonymity. We've eliminated Google as the default search engine from inside of Firefox, and we replaced it with Scroogle. Scroogle is basically just a Google scraper. It's all of the same results from Google, but without all of the tracking that Google would love to do when you're performing searches. So there are a couple of other mechanisms you'll see at the browser level when you boot AnonymOS. We're also looking at implementing an anti-phishing toolbar or one of the anti-phishing tools available in order to help overcome phishing as one of the potential problems that people are facing. So this brings us to the what can you do? Number one, run a Tor server. Performance and anonymity of the network are both affected by the number of Tor servers there are online. We were really happy to see that upon the initial release of AnonymOS, approximately 50 additional Tor servers jumped online within the next week or two following. Right now, though, there's maybe 350, and I haven't checked recently, but probably no more than 400 Tor servers worldwide. The more Tor servers there are, number one, the more anonymous you'll be because the less likely it's going to be that somebody will be able to identify or preempt your path. Number two, the more Tor servers we have that are high bandwidth, the more likely you'll hit those high bandwidth Tor servers and actually get a moderately fast connection. Again, contribute, contribute, contribute. The Tor project needs your money. They were previously funded by the EFF. They are no longer. They are still hosted. Their website is still hosted by the EFF, but they do not have continued funding from the EFF. So right now, Dingledine and team are limited by spare time development, and because they don't have a whole lot of funding behind them, it's been hard for them to keep up with all of the requests and ideas they've had to improve the network. You can still find them at the EFF website. So if you go to tor.eff.org, and I think I've got that link in the end of the slides, but tor.eff.org, And they've got contact information there for all of the project team and all the development team. I think there's even a big donate button on the front page because their funding was pulled. Hey, we'd love to see you pop up a Tor server, and especially anybody here that's got like, OC 128 connection and no filtering, no limitations on bandwidth. Throw up a Tor server. Beautiful, and that's what the Tor network needs in order to be functional and, again, dependable as an anonymizing network. Now, that said, even though the EFF is no longer funding Tor, please also support the EFF. The EFF has great attorneys who are going to be the folks that help set precedents to ensure that your ass doesn't go to jail when somebody's browsing and torrenting and pulling down movies through your Tor server. Bear in mind, when you're running a Tor server, people are going to be doing things through your Tor node that you may or may not approve of, that your cable company may or may not approve of. Therefore, it's important to support the organizations that are trying to help ensure that Tor doesn't go offline. Of course, again, use encrypted protocols. I've said this, I can't say it enough times. Don't use POP, don't use IMAP, don't use clear text AIM and all of the other various and sundry protocols that most folks depend on day to day. It's not really that hard to make the switch to using almost exclusively encrypted protocols. Web traffic may be the real exception there because not every website runs HTTPS. But most mail providers support IMAP-S. Most mail providers support POP3S. You have to move to Jabber, I think, if you really want secure chat. But again, along the same lines, there are plenty of easy ways to migrate from insecure clear text protocols to secure encrypted protocols. Internationalization and translation help. We got a couple of offers last time. Right now, although OpenBSD has native support for a wide variety of languages, all of our interfaces and our scripts are English only. So if anybody wants to help make AnonymOS more valuable in countries and places where English is not the native language, we'd love your help in translating and internationalizing the base OS. One of the things that we've seen and one of the things that we've heard is that AnonymOS is a great step in the right direction towards solving the China problem. So I will preempt this question and answer this up front. When we released AnonymOS at ShmooCon, we actually got a write-up in Wired News online. And one of the reporter's goals was to identify whether or not we solved the China problem. The Wired News article basically said, no, this does not solve the China problem. I would have to say that we believe at this point in time that AnonymOS as a technical solution solves the China problem better than any other existing solution. The problem is in an environment where the Chinese government can easily identify and shut down all of the Tor servers, there is no real solution to the China problem. The Chinese government controls all, and therefore it's very difficult for us to come up with a 100% solution. However, using encrypted protocols, utilizing a system such as Tor, utilizing operating systems that can be popped or dropped into a cyber cafe CD-ROM drive and run with or without rebooting, these make a great step forwards in allowing political bloggers and political dissidents in fascist regimes to participate in the internet as a global community. So again, whether or not we solve the China problem, I think is debatable. I think we solve it as well as anything else does. And I think hopefully with future development and implementation of suggestions and your feedback, we'll get closer and closer to solving that problem. Of course, we always want to know what you'd like to see. Our feature requests drive our future development. We did most of what we wanted to do in version 0.shmoo. Now what we're looking for is what's going to make AnonymOS more usable to you, to your grandma, to your mom, to somebody that you meet that's not technical, that doesn't run Gentoo on their personal box, to somebody that's used to running Windows and clicking on the big blue E in order to browse the web and check their email. That's ultimately who we need to cater AnonymOS to, because if it's easy enough for them, it's definitely easy enough for you. Worst idea ever. So this brings us to the live demo portion of this. And what I'm going to do, if you guys will give me just a moment, I'm going to try now to bring online Dig Unix, who is back in Atlanta and hopefully available. It looks like he is. So let's see if we can bring him online for both audio and video demonstration. Everybody cross your fingers. Skype and WebEx to do a live demo of an operating system running inside of VMware. This is a very, very dubious setup here, and I'm really interested to see if this is going to work at all. All right, we got as far as connecting, so... Now, as soon as I actually establish a connection to our demo master in Atlanta, then I'm going to swap the projector over here and let you guys follow along. Yeah, I discovered that before, although I was back and forth. One of the connections that I hit between the Hilton Honors and the local, I don't know which one it was, one of them was actually working pretty well. An earlier test of this demonstrated that it was possible. Whether or not it would go well remains to be seen. All right, so while I'm attempting to connect, I guess this is probably as good a time as any for questions. And let me go ahead and preface this by telling you guys what we've released for this particular event, and as well, because I failed to bring swag, what we have released, our biggest request, aside from make this run off of a USB key or how do I install it to my hard drive, was how did you do it? Where's the documentation? Well, a lot of our responses have been, hey, OpenBSD man pages. What do you want, guys? We're working hard to build the OS. We can't write all the documentation, too. But that said, one of the folks who really was most responsible for putting together the basis for AnonymOS, Fade of Chaos Theory, he built essentially a pretty exhaustive, almost blindly easy document that will allow you to essentially recreate this from scratch. So what we are releasing, and which I will be posting immediately at the end of this talk, we are releasing a PDF version of a document that, as far as all of our testing has demonstrated, corrects all of the problems we found in every other tool online for building OpenBSD-based live CDs. And with this, you will be able to produce everything up to AnonymOS with the exception of the tools that you choose to install. So it's up to you which packages you install on your box. You can stick Tor and Privoxy on there, and you'll have something that roughly approximates what we have now. Dig, you hear us?
Hello.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
What's up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Hear me?
Yeah, I don't know where the speaker is on this thing.
Yes. Hello.
I'm trying to mic it.
Yes.
You guys see how much I use my IBM. All right, hold on. Keep talking. Keep making noises, dude.
What the fuck? Fix it.
Is that good? All right. So Dig, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to bring up our WebEx and move the projector over, and I'm going to let you do the demonstration here. Are you logged
Hello?
into our WebEx session? Hello. Hello.
Okay, I can hear you now.
All right, good. All right, cool. Are you logged into our...
Let's see here.
Are you logged into our WebEx session yet?
Yes, I'm in.
All right. Your audio is pretty crappy, but
Yo.
we can kind of hear you, so... All right, so while he's catching up with our audio here again... because
Where's the mic on this MacBook Pro?
On what? Yeah. I don't know, dude. I don't have one yet. I didn't bring swag, so in lieu of swag, I brought beer for questions. I hope that satisfies everybody. However, I will say this. Since I'm being videotaped, I would prefer, I'd love all questions, but if when you have a question you happen to not be of legal drinking age, please let me know beforehand so I'm not filmed giving beer to minors in a state that's not my own. All right. Hey, Dig, you still with me? I think we lost him.
Someone can tell me how to bridge a PPT to an Ethernet. I can give you internet.
I actually have an EVDO card, which I could bust out here if we get excited about it, but I'm jumping all over the end of my presentation, so I'm trying to go quickly. We'll see if this is going. It looks like I'm back online. I think we lost... Oh, hold on. Here he is. Leave it to Skype. So, while I'm establishing this connection, do we have any questions that were not already asked? Yes.
Go ahead.
Either or.
So not so much a question, but in regards to the whole instant messenger Jabber, encryption thing, if you support, I don't know if AnonymOS supports off-the-record messaging, but if it does, or if the instant messenger client does, then you can encrypt all IM traffic regardless of the protocol you're using. In fact, then the people running the server can actually see the IM traffic.
Game does have a native plugin for off the record. It was not implemented in the first version, again, primarily because there was no port for it. But something that we've considered, again, we're trying not to move away from the ports tree as much as possible for reasons of maintainability. But something like off the record is very much in line with the goals of what we're trying to do. So to not implement it when it exists and builds on OpenBSD would be kind of silly. So it's something that I would not be surprised to see in an upcoming version. It's not there yet, so it probably will not be in the next alpha release.
What is that?
Off the record, OTR. It's a mechanism that provides ubiquitous encryption and also plausible deniability for instant messaging chats. I don't know who asked the question, so I'm just scanning around randomly hoping that I look at you. The bottom line being that not only is it encryption for your instant messaging chats, but it is also, let's see if you guys can see what's going on here. Presentation projector. What's that? Oh, no, I just wanted to give him the opportunity. He was on the roster for supposed to be here. If we can't pull it off, then I'm just going to go ahead and demo it regardless. But nonetheless, I was trying. User not online. No, I think he got pissed off and quit. So off the record would be something we'd like to see and like to add because, again, I think it's right in line with what we're doing. No, I can't say that we have. No, let me rephrase that. I can't say that I have. Active development of AnonymOS was probably about 6 of us, and I really have to give credit where credit is due. I'm the idea man, and I'm the mouthpiece for Chaos Theory. There are a lot of much smarter guys than me who are back at home building a lot of this stuff and making a lot of this possible. Most specifically, I have to credit Fade and Elmore, they're our resident BSD experts, and they were the guys that really, that almost beat us into submission and made us use OpenBSD, but they're also the ones that have made a lot of this work and put a lot of the glue into the project. I hope beers. Look, if you've asked a question and I've answered it and you want a beer, come get it. It's here. Yes. Sorry, in the back. We have not even touched IPv6 yet, and it's something that I'd like to see down the road, but I think it's of debatable importance at this point in time. I mean, I think it is something that is ultimately important, but actually in this current version, if I remember correctly, I think we yanked out most IPv6 components in the OpenBSD code and just eliminated any of it compiling because we're not really supporting or utilizing IPv6. So I don't know. I haven't done much investigation into how a lot of these components will work across an IPv6 network, specifically Tor. I don't know, but it's something that I think we'll be investigating in future versions. So,
Anti-forensics, one of your design goals. You're doing it on live CD.
In that anti-forensics is very much one way to phrase privacy and anonymity. I would say yes. Hello. Are you there?
Holy shit.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, good. Are you on the WebEx? Hold on, I'm trying here.
Whoa, that was awesome.
You sound like you're on acid, dude.
Yeah, I'm on the WebEx.
All right, I'm not anymore.
So do you. But I am.
We're all on acid, man. You're missing a great party. Wish you were here, dude.
What's this screen doing?
Well, my screen is apparently trying to reconnect to the WebEx meeting now, so I don't know, dude. I
wish I was there too.
You're getting a much better response from the crowd than I have. So thanks for joining us, dude. Unfortunately now I'm unable to connect back to the WebEx.
Anyway, dude.
All right.
Granny trannies. I fixed it.
All right. I think I'm just going to have to let you say hi to the crowd because I can't get back on the WebEx, so I'm going to run with the demo, bro. If the WebEx... All right, hold on. I got you. Let's take advantage of it while I got it, dude. I'm giving it to you now. I'm sharing the desktop. Tell me if you...
Where's the goatee?
Goatsee's on the other laptop, bro. I switched the projector.
Oh, shit.
You see it? Are you there?
I see a blue screen. Hold on.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm waiting on the screen.
Damn it. Jonathan Bagby. Who the hell is that, bro? All right. If nobody else will.
This is a dude I used to work with.
More beer for question askers. Free beer. Come on. It's like $8 a shot out there. You're silly to ask a question and not get a free beer.
Is there a way to get it anonymously?
Well, sneak up. Just stay below the camera. You'll be all right. Hey, Dig. Are you there? You got a screen?
Yo. Yeah, dude. Oh, there we go.
All right. You're moving the mouse and everything, bro. Woo! All right, dude. I'm crossing my fingers. This demo is definitely going to suck, but let's do our best. Let's hope. All right, bro. Hit play. That's the one.
They all suck. All right.
Now click on it.
All right, hold on. Did I click it?
No? No?
Am I on the green arrow?
You're on the green arrow. You've not yet managed to depress it, though.
Awesome.
Come on, buddy. You're almost there.
Pink all night.
You want me to help you? You want me to push the button, dude?
Hey, dude, how about you fake it for me?
All right. Give me my damn mouse back.
Fake the click, dude.
Ah! Now you got to click on it, bro. I can't. You got control of my mouse. All right. Okay. Do you have control or do I? It appears you do.
Control the mouse. Okay, go.
Yo. That's the wrong window, bro. This is either the best demo or the worst demo ever, I swear.
Hey, dude, this was the worst idea ever.
Thank God I put that in the presentation. All right, I'm stealing that shit back. Let go of the mouse, bro. Come on. Quit. Damn.
I did. I ain't doing shit.
Ah! All right. Then you start. Oh, wait. No, I got it. All right, hold on. Let me jump back over here. Okay. Let me go full screen. All right. We're just going to walk through this together, Kevin. You ready for this? Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. I lost all types of shit. Can you? All right, you guys.
Dude, I'm seeing no screen updates.
Give it a minute. So, one of the things that we've also done in version AnonymOS 0.2, red and black are no longer the default colors for our initial boot screen questions. Unfortunately, you probably can't even tell that there is a question there, so I will read it to you. At the beginning of boot, you guys saw our flashy little ANSI animation, all the blocks coming together, and the first question that we are presented with, actually, I think I must have hit enter already. Do we want to create a password or generate a one-time password? The idea being, again, this is a live CD, so right now, nothing is saved to the drive. You've got the option of either creating a password, so it's something easy to remember, or you can have AnonymOS just generate a moderately secure one-time use password. In this case, I'm going to create one, and I will use a password, the ultra-secure P. All right, the next question we are presented with as part of the boot process. Jesus, I can't even read that. Would you like to set your time zone by GMT offset or USA time zone? In this case, we're going to go with USA time zone. Here we have a list of our time zones. Can you guys even see that there's text on there at all? It'll get better when we get to the GUI, I swear. Choose a time zone. We are Pacific, so select Pacific. All right, no control. Better? Better? All right. Now you can tell there's text. I still have to read it to you, but it's a little bit better. Okay, so one of the things that we've also built in, and I forgot to mention this during the presentation, In an effort to further anonymity at the lowest layers possible, we also have the option of randomizing MAC address when we first boot AnonymOS. By this, we're not going to have a consistent MAC address that shows up, even in local network logs, for the proactive network admin. The one piece of forewarning I will give you is do not randomize the MAC address if you're running in virtual PC or VMware, where all the shit breaks and it won't talk to anything. So right now, we're going to say no, and we actually added that warning in there too. VMware virtual PC, say no. So we said no, automatically configure network, yes. VMware video driver detected, press any key. And now the option to go windowed or command line. We're going to go up windowed, which will give us a GUI. Now, if I could move my mouse, I'd actually give you guys a full screen view of this, but nonetheless, you'll see our network detection script pulling up. It's getting an IP. VMware? This is VMware. Control-Shift-Enter. Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Maybe. I thought Control-Alt did it. There it goes. All right, finally. Hey, Dig, you still with us? I guess not. All right, so this is our default interface upon booting into AnonymOS. Again, another point of feedback we've gotten is, hey, could you guys let us change the background, please? This looks anything but inconspicuous when I'm sitting in the school library. And I think that's fair and understandable. I think I'm stepping all over my time, so I'll be brief. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pull up a couple of these tools and show you, again, kind of design goals here from a GUI perspective. On the desktop, we've basically added 4 icons. We've got web browser, email, instant messenger, and home. We opted to do this in lieu of Firefox, Thunderbird, game, and home because, again, my mom's going to be lucky enough to recognize what web browser means. We'd probably be better off to use a little blue E. So what we will do... Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go ahead and launch web browser. And this will fire up Firefox again. We are using Firefox 106, I believe, on this version of AnonymOS. We've also added, again, bearing in mind that this is Fluxbox, there is a right-click menu available, and similarly, we've renamed all of our tools to web browser, email, instant messenger, command prompt. You can jump into the advanced menu and get all of the other stuff that we've hidden and embedded in here as well. So, jumping back to Firefox, and this is not really going to be anything remarkably new, especially if you've used Tor before, but starting out at the README, the first thing I guess we will do is jump over to a site that can give us an idea of where we are coming from. So I'm going to jump to ipchicken.com because it's kind of like what is my IP, but it's got a chicken on it. And if all goes well, we'll get a fast enough Tor server that this will pull up before I'm actually booted off stage. Yeah, right? Was that the chicken? Can you see us, Kev? No, looks like we've gotten somebody's home modem connection for a Tor server. Also very possible. If the network is slow and Tor is slow, then we're toast and we're never going to see anything. All right,
probably
so
the Skype connection.
Yeah, it probably is the Skype connection. I'm using up all my damn bandwidth. All right, well, I guess what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and wrap here. What I do want to do is point you guys to the Chaos Theory website. Immediately after this presentation, I'm going to jump online and I'm going to turn up the download for the new documentation on building your own AnonymOS. I encourage everybody to grab a copy, play with it, give us your feedback, and, build your own AnonymOS CDs and help us figure out what people really want to see in projects like this. We're happy that we've been able... Woo! And where are we coming from? It is, in fact, a Tor exit node. So we have demonstrated conclusively that we are now automatically browsing through the Tor onion routing network. And again, as if the connection speed didn't give that away. All right, so that's the wrap for the demo. Hey, Dig, you still there, dude? Well, in theory, there should be a chicken at the top. Hey, Dig, you got mouse control? You want to do me the favor of close the browser for me, bro? Yes.
Where can I get this off your site? Because I tried to get it earlier this week, and it's pretty much hard to tell.
Yeah, that was my fucks up. We changed websites like last week, and I forgot to update the download link. So the best
Dude,
place...
I don't have shit. I'm still looking at virtual PC.
The best place to get it right now is SourceForge because they got a whole shitload more bandwidth than we do. So it's at SourceForge. The project name is ANONYM-OS. It's AnonymOS, but with a hyphen instead of a dot. SourceForge has it. There is also a torrent for AnonymOS at linuxtracker.org, I believe. The links were on the old site, and like I said, that was my foul up. I moved the website over. No, the version currently available for download is not, but I would like to say that within the next X number of weeks, there will be a new version coming. And that new version will implement those nifty things in our roadmap, like booting from USB, installing to the hard drive, and alpha versions of Tor. So that's it for me. I've got somebody else coming up behind me, so let me not be a total dick and get off stage. If anybody has any other questions that were not yet addressed here, I will be around all afternoon, probably at the bar, drinking more Guinness. Please don't hesitate to come up and hit me with questions. And if your questions are beyond me, then I can get on Skype and call some other people who are smarter than me that made all this shit work. Thank you all very much for coming, and thanks for staying this late in the afternoon.